Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we would be discussing about the respiratory system examination, which is very important as far as the children population is concerned, because the major of the children at least once, or you can say more than once or 5 times, they suffer from one or the other illness related with the respiratory system. So from the practical point of view, it is very important for you to know the respiratory system in detail so as to examine the child and do the specific respiratory system examination. In different books on the clinical methods, you would be seeing that the respiratory system examination is mentioned in different ways. So I'd be following the most common one which has been described, and later I will add up the other view of the other books like Macleod or Hutchinson, etc. The disease of the respiratory tract accounts more consultations with the general practitioners than any other disease related with other body systems. So it is more also responsible for more inability to work and more days lost from work. Or you can say, from the pediatric scenario, more inability to attend the school and do the duties of the school related also. So it is very important from that point of view. And respiratory tract extends from nose to the alveoli. It's very important, and includes not only the air conducting passages but the blood supply as well. So this is very important point of view, because some of the books on the clinical methods, they only look into the chest and the examination of the chest as the examination of the respiratory system. Some of the books, they mention the ear, nose, throat, that examination together. And in some books, they will start with the examination from the nose, then the throat, and then the respiratory system, that is the alveoli, lungs, and other areas, including the chest as an individual entity. So it is up to us to understand that it is one and the same, and respiratory system extends from the nose itself, and the examination should start from the nose. But for the practical point of view, since you have learned in the second year, as the respiratory system examination, which mainly relates with the examination of the chest, so I'll be taking up those points so as not to create much confusion for you. So respiratory system examination is done mainly under the following. It's very simple. With any system examination, we always will look into these points. On inspection, what we are finding. On palpation of the chest, does any abnormality can be found, or are we finding? On percussion, what inference we obtain? On auscultation, what do we hear? So these things are noted down systematic way. In adult, we will go in the systematic way. In children, we never do that. Why? For the practical point of view. Say, for example, a newborn is looked upon in a different, you can go in this same approach, but it is not the same for a 2-year or 3-year kid. You can't go for a inspection first, then we'll do the palpation, and then I'll go for the percussion, and lastly I'll go for the auscultation. Of course, auscultation is done at the last, but the thing is that you have to keep in mind, in children there is no systematic way to do the examination for the practical point of view, thinking that the children are most agile and are always wandering around, So depending on their age group, say for example, a 2-year kid will like to sit in the lap, whereas he doesn't want to lie down on the bed. It will take a little time for you to get accustomed, or for the child to get accustomed with the doctor. Whereas a newborn or 3 months or 6 months baby, definitely you can make them lie down on the bed and do the examination. Even though I prefer that they could be put on the chest of the mother or the father, so that will be easier for us to examination. That also is quite fine. So it's up to us to find out which way we interact with the child and how easily we convey the importance of the examination of the chest, and convince the parents regarding it as well as the child too. So let us see on inspection what are the things we are supposed to examine. And for the practical purpose, I have put the photos of a child as well as for the adults. So major of the pictures are from the children, and I would like to give the credit of the different slides and the pictures to the open source education materials available on the internet. And for the, not to make it a confusing one, I have not given the individual credit for each and every slide. Okay, so let's see on inspection what we are going to. On inspection, first of all, what are the things we can see while we look. That is simple as pratyaksha pramana. So it is better you undress the child, okay, and through play it will be easier. For a elder child, you can convince them to show the chest. So shape of the chest is to be seen first. So in a normal child, bilaterally symmetrical and elliptical in cross section. Okay, so some of the times the shape of the chest may not be normal. So how will I identify it? So I've got some pictures in the next slides. So chest deformities that are called as the chest deformities, commonly said as the anterior-posterior diameter and the transverse diameter. Sorry, the anterior-posterior length is to transverse length is being taken and being compared. So in a normal scenario, it is 5:7, whereas in a flat chest, it will be 1:2. So commonest reasons for flat chest are pulmonary tuberculosis or fibrothorax. Then we have got something called as barrel-shaped chest, where anterior posterior length is equal to the transverse length, that is 1:1. So it is the commonest physiological during infancy as well as in old age. Whereas once the child turns into toddler or school going, then the shape of the chest definitely changes. And during that time or later period during adulthood, if the barrel shaped chest is found, then it is considered to be pathological. And one of the commonest reason is COPD. It is a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Okay. Next one is pigeon chest, that is also called as pectus carneatus. There is a forward protrusion in the sternum and adjacent costal cartilages. So it will look like a typical pigeon's chest or pigeon's head like. That is, there is a forward protrusion. Okay, pigeon's chest, you can say. In some, if the situation is grave or severe, then it will look like a pigeon's head also. Okay, but obviously we have to consider it as pectus carneatus, commonest in vitamin D deficiency, that is rickets or childhood asthma and Marfan. So this is a pictorial representation of the same. So how you are going to recognize the barrel chest. In a normal chest, the ratio of anterior, posterior and transverse diameter, or we can say the length, okay, is 1:2. And in patients with barrel chest, the ratio approaches 1:1. Okay, so this is a normal chest and this is a barrel chest. So you can see the anterior posterior diameter is equal with the transverse diameter. Okay, so in this case it is not so. So this is a pigeon shaped chest. As you can see, there is a prominence or protrusion of the lower part of the sternum along with the costal margins or the ribs too. Okay, the pigeon shaped chest. So there is one more picture, the next slide. So here also there is a prominence in the very mild prominence. So this also could be considered as a pigeon shaped chest. Next is about the funnel chest, that is pectus excavatum. So the normal hollowness on the lower end of the sternum, there is an exaggeration. So it will feel like a funnel or excavation. Okay, so it could be a developmental defect on the Marfan syndrome is one of the possibility. So if it is a developmental defect, obviously in this condition the apex beat is shifted further to the left in the vital, and the vital capacity will be restricted. So next one is a scorbutic rosary. Rosary, I think in Malayalam it's called as konda, where these particular religion people as a mala, as a chain. Angulation with or without beading or rosary formation in the of the ribs. So along with the backward displacement of the sternum. So commonly seen in scurvy, which is a vitamin C deficiency. As you can see, the pectus excavatum, so there is an excavation, there is a hollowness in the chest, and this is scorbutic rosary. So as you can see, a beads like appearance in a scurvy child. Next one is about the Harrison sulcus. So in chronic respiratory diseases of the childhood or in childhood asthma and even in rickets, vitamin D deficiency, so there will be indrawing of the ribs to form a symmetrical horizontal line, okay, or groove above the costal margin and along the line of attachment of the diaphragm. Okay, so hyperinflation of the lung, and due to the hyperinflation of the lung and repeated strong contraction of the diaphragm, so that is the main cause. So area where the diaphragm is attached, so that area there will be a horizontal line will be appearing that we call as the Harrison sulcus, and these are the different reasons for it. And next one is about the ricketary rosary, that is a bead like enlargement of the costochondral junction found in rickets. So this is a ricketary rosary where he will be also having the other features of the rickets, so that's why we will name it as the ricketary rosary. So rosary like beads you can see here. Okay, and the same child with the rib beading rachitic rosary, where he is also having a weakened rib pulled by the muscle, which is known as the Harrison sulcus. So it could be a horizontal line also in small children, and the sternum may be pulled into a pigeon chest like deformity. So that also could be seen. So in rickets, so this pigeon chest is also one of the commonest features. Example of a Harrison sulcus with a pot belly. So pot belly may be because of the splenomegaly or hepatomegaly, or due to the edema, which we usually call as the ascites. So as you can see, there is a horizontal line here due to the respiratory discomfort the child is having and indrawing of the accessory muscles of respiration also. Okay, with the severe compromised respiration. Next is one of the congenital deformity, where the congenital absence of either both of the collarbones or a maldevelopment, improper development of the collarbone. As you can see, this is a unilateral phenomena, this is a bilateral phenomena. It's called as cleidocranial dystosis. So all these you are observing on, as you can say, as a pratyaksha pramana itself. So the mere look on the naked chest itself will give you the idea on what the disease the child may be suffering from. Next is about the movement of the chest. That's also very important. So whether it is a unilateral or bilateral, that could be seen. So in unilateral, pleural effusion, chest trauma, pneumothorax, hydropneumothorax, consolidation or fibrosis of the lung. And the bilateral conditions like emphysema, hydrothorax, obesity, bronchial asthma, diffuse intestinal fibrosis, myasthenia gravis. So to know more about all these, we can just find it in the dictionary, medical dictionary. Or measure of this you would have also learned. So I'm not going in much detail about it because of the lack of time. Next is about the apical impulse, that mainly states for the apex beat. Okay, so the area where the apex beat is to be seen is to be felt. So that area we can see the apical impulse. You can see the beat. Okay, so what you need to do is that you have to stand on the right side of the patient and look tangentially over the precordium. Maybe in the next video that I would like to share at the end of this or the next session, at that time, in that it will be a clear picture, you can get it. Okay, this tracheal deviation. So ask the patient to look forward and look for any deviation. The same on palpation, you can palpate the trachea and see for any deviation. Okay. Next is about, very important, is about the respiration, rate, rhythm and type. That I will discuss in the next slide. So venous prominence. So the conditions like superior vena cava syndrome, the presence of distended vein over the chest wall can be seen. Respiratory rate on a normal resting phase is around, in adults it's 12 to 20, whereas in children it is quite higher. At the time of birth till 1 year it will be 30 to 60 per minute, almost like very high. Okay, so like 1 minute when you compare with the second, or 1 hour I can say. Okay, anyways, leave it, just a code. So 1 to 3 years it will be 24 to 40 per minute, and 3 to 6 it will be 22 to 34 per minute. 6 to 12, that is after the primary education, 18 to 30 per minute. I mean, not after, during primary education, you can say. After primary education, that is during teenage, 12 to 18 will be 12 to 16 per minute. Okay, so these resting rates are very, very important. So maybe you can get the average of it and you can learn it in, like, in newborn it is around 40 per minute, infancy 30 per minute, toddler 25 per minute, school age 20 per minute. So that also is quite fine. Okay, the thing you have to keep in mind is that normal ratio of respiration to pulse rate is 1 is. So whether the respiration is abdominal or thoracic type of breathing. Okay, so predominantly in children the respiration is most often abdominothoracic in nature, and if at all there is a thoracic type of breathing, it points towards some abnormality in the abdomen, like massive hepatosplenomegaly, ascites, peritonitis, etc. Okay, and there are different forms of abnormal rhythms like chain stroke breathing, etc., that we can learn regarding it in detail, maybe in other areas about the respiratory diseases. Even there is something called as Kusumal type of breathing. That is a very rapid and deep breathing, which is seen in acidosis like diabetic ketoacidosis or aspirin poisoning. Then rapid but shallow type of breathing seen in pulmonary edema. Okay. And prolonged inspiration, where which is seen with the lower airway obstructions. Okay, prolonged inspiration. The common example is asthma, whereas upper airway obstruction produces stridor, whereas lower airway obstruction leads to wheeze. All these points you can connect it later, and you can look into that in the section where breathing patterns and CNS localization is commonly discussed along with the neurology. Okay, so apart from this, increased rate and depth of respiration is found in excitement, exertion, fever, acidosis, etc. So with each degree rise in centigrade in temperature, the respiratory rate increases by about 4 to 5 per minute. Yeah. And the decreased rate and depth of respiration can be seen in narcotic poisoning or intracranial pressure increased intracranial pressure, metabolic acidosis, then hypothyroidism. Okay. And if the rate of respiration is increased, then we call it as the tachypnea, and if it is decreased, we call it as the it is called as the bradypnea. In the same time, you can look for the retraction or fullness of the intercostal space while the child is breathing. So abnormal retraction is there, could be possible with the severe asthma, COPD, or upper airway obstruction. Fullness of the intercostal space can be seen in pleural effusion, where the pleura is filled with either any fluid like pyothorax or hemothorax or pneumothorax, where pneumo means air filled, hemo means blood filled, pyothorax means pus filled. So likewise, the different reasons where you can find the fullness of the intercostal space. And you have to look for the level of nipple, whether both of the nipple are at the same level or not. So that also will give you an idea on underlying disease. Skin over the chest. So you can have to look for the cold abscess, any abscess formation, any ulcer, any swelling, any scar mark. So for example, earlier I was mentioning about emphysema, right? So a swelling may be there in advanced emphysema, points towards the chest wall, and there is a possibility of an air leak which produces a subcutaneous emphysema, etc. So that's why how to look into that also. And the pleural effusion and the tension pneumothorax, say for example, it could be a unilateral. So all those things you have to look, and you have to mention. A unilateral flattening also may be seen in case of a collapse of the lung, etc. Then you have to look into the accessory muscles. So whether accessory muscles of respiration are working or not. So in inspiration, there is an active process where the contraction of the due to the contraction of the intercostal muscles and diaphragm takes place. Okay. So the muscles like scalene, sternocleidomastoid, platysma, pectoralis, serratus anterior, which will be involved. Okay. On expiration, you have to look into the passive process due to the elastic recoil of the lung muscles. So abdominal recti muscle. So you have to look into the abdomen, latissimus dorsi too. So whether there is any, whether these are working or not, that is to be also. If you want, you can give a comment on that. And next, coming into the palpation of the part of the respiratory examination. On palpation, you can look into the surface temperature. It's not said in many of the textbooks, but still you'll come to know. And then tenderness, when any tenderness is there at the rib region or intercostal region. Okay, if rib tenderness, it could be because of the trauma or fracture, or intercostal tenderness because of the liver abscess or emphyema thoracics. Okay, corroboration of inspiratory findings, or if you look into the back of the chest, any spinal deformities. Okay, like the scoliosis or kyphosis or etc. could be noted. Okay, and about the position of the trachea and apex beta. So it's very important one. Palpate in the standing or sitting position with the arm placed symmetrically on the two sides. Flex the neck with the left hand so that the chin remains in the same place. Insert the tip of the index finger in the suprasternal notch. So feel the tracheal ring. Now side the index finger in the angle between the sternocleidomastoid muscles and trachea on the both sides. So on the deviated side, angle is narrowed and feel resistant. So it's very simple. What you need to do is that you have to just palpate the trachea using the middle finger with the index and ring finger on the sternal attachment of the sternocleidomastoids. Okay. The next picture. So in this, instead of the middle finger, what they have done is that they have used only one finger. Okay, this is from another book. Okay, so in this place, what I am suggesting is that in this place you use the middle finger so that it will be easy. You can put this finger here, here. Okay, so look for the space between the trachea and the sternocleidomastoid. So what you need to do is that you have to look for this space, nothing else. Okay, so it will give you the idea whether the trachea is shifted or not. So trachea is usually shifted to the same side of the lesion in collapse. So if the left lung is collapsed, then the trachea will be shifted to the same side. Whereas in case of pleural effusion and tension pneumothorax, there is a ballooning, tension pneumothorax, ballooning of the lung. Then in that condition, what will happen? It will push the trachea so that it will be shifted to the other side. Okay, opposite side. I got one. So this is the way how it should be done. That's what the present technique suggests you. Whereas the previously whatever photo has been shown, that is set by another textbook, so that also could be used. Okay. And I was the reasons for shift of trachea to the same side is fibrosis of the lung, collapse of the lung. Pneumonectomy, that is when you surgically remove a particular part of the lung. Okay. To the opposite side, massive pleural effusion, pneumothorax, hydropneumothorax, already mentioned. Next is about the movement of the chest. That is the upper part of the thorax. What you need to do? The instructions are very simple. Face the patient's back. Place both hands over the patient's supraclavicular fossa. Compare on both sides to the extent of upward movement of the hands during quiet respiration. from the anterior thoracic movement, what you need to do is that face the patient, keep the fingertip of both the hands on either side of the patient's rib cage so that the tip of the thumbs approximate each other in the midline without touching the chest wall. So ask the patient to take a deep breath. So compare the movement of the thumbs on both sides away from the midline. So it can also be assessed by holding a loose fold of skin between the thumbs and noting their separation. I'll show the picture, then it will become. So what you need to do is that you have to keep from the front of the chest, you have to keep both the fingers touching, that is both the thumbs touching together in this fashion. Okay, so that is placing the two hands of the examiner on the either side of the patient chest, and the thumbs are stretched to approximate the midline. And then once the respiratory movement starts, ask the patient to go for the inspiration and then expire. So on inspiration, definitely there will be a respiratory movement. Okay, so what will happen? Then there will be a space which is getting created, okay, between the thumbs. Okay, so the separation of the thumb is to be seen during inspiration, and usually that's what we say as the expansion. The average will be in adolescent children will be 5 centimeter chest expansion, and it should be symmetrical bilaterally. Symmetrical movement has to be seen on the both the hands. Okay, the same on the back also. It's nothing, it's very simple. Okay, so in the back of the chest, what we are doing, posterior thoracic movement we'll be seeing. So it should be seen in the infrascapular region. So here we have got the scapula, butterfly shaped. So in the infrascapular region, we will be keeping the hands in the same fashion, and we'll be looking for the movement of the hands, whether it's moving on the both sides, and the distance between the thumbs. Okay, approximation. Next, you need to look into the chest expansion. That also could done by using a inch tape. Okay, in male, measure at the level of nipple. In female, measure just below the breast, and measure normal circumference of the chest. Ask the patient to take a deep inspiration, and again the measure the chest circumference, and the difference between the two is known as the chest expansion. So in a normal scenario, it will be 5 to 8 centimeter. That's what I mentioned during the movement with the aspiration also. While you are keeping the hand, there will be a maximum of 5 centimeter around in adolescent boys. In adolescent girls, it will be even more lesser. So this is the picture. A decreased chest expansion can be seen unilateral, the same reasons as mentioned in the on inspection, that is pleural effusion, then pneumothorax, collapse of a lung, fibrosis of the lung. It will be unilateral. There is bilateral, emphysema, hydrothorax, bronchial asthma, myasthenia gravis. Next one is vocal fremitus, that is palpation of the laryngeal vibration on the chest wall when the patient is asked to repeat 99 or 99 or 1111111. Okay, so a rhythmic one vibration kind sound producing is to be spelled or should be pronounced by the patient, and that vibration whether we are feeling it on the chest wall. Okay, so for that what we are doing is that we have to place the flat of the hand or ulnar border of the right hand over the intercostal space. So you have to be very careful that we are keeping the in the intercostal space, not above the rib. Okay, so what you need to do is that you have to compare the patient telling these 99 or 9999 or 1111 on the both sides, and it could be felt increased in case of consolidation and decreased in case of pleural effusion. So wherever there is a hard mass, there will be increased and decreased in pleural effusion. Okay. So with this, we will be time being stopping the first session, and the next session will be dealing about the percussion and auscultation of the respiratory system. If you have any doubts or need any clarification, please drop by these contacts. I'll be happy to help. Thank you for your patient listening and learning.